This story, Maxx Crosby trade rumors, Dallas Cowboys. So if Maxx Crosby gets added to Dallas, plus you'd have to give up a first-round pick, plus let's say they get a Caleb Downs or the top corner in the draft, that's a different defense. So when they traded Micah Parsons, I said, Green Bay is going to win the trade initially, just like when Shaq left the Lakers. Whenever there's a big sports divorce or a divorce in real life with relationships, it doesn't mean there's not pain for somebody or both people involved. Like Paul George bails on OKC. Yeah, it hurt for a year. And Shaq left the Lakers. They had to make a choice. Yeah, it hurt for a year. And Micah left the Cowboys. Yeah, but they got Kenny Clark directly because of the trade, and they got Quinnen Williams indirectly with one of the draft picks from the trade, and now you add Maxx Crosby and a first-round corner, Overshown. Yeah, that's a different defense. So, you have to be careful about trades. Green Bay, just like the Miami Heat with Shaq, Green Bay was going to win that trade first year. You got to eat a dirt sandwich. It's going to look bad. But the point of it was first-round picks, which you could use and leverage for other players. So Kenny Clark, Quinnen Williams, Overshown, Maxx Crosby, that is a real front. That is an elite front. I would make the move. And I also tend to think that Max is better than Micah Parsons. Since he entered the league, Maxx Crosby leads the NFL in tackles for losses, not Myles Garrett, not Micah Parsons. Also, Crosby's a top 6 edge rusher against the run. Micah Parsons, 18, 19, 20, middle of the pack. So I think Max is a better player. I also think because they often play with leads and have a high-powered ecosystem offensively, that Micah was a great get for Green Bay. Green Bay is not a market that does well in free agency. It's not that attractive to a lot of pro athletes. So Green Bay's like, we're going to make a big trade and go get a difference-making edge rusher. I thought it was a great move by Green Bay, and they were going to win it the first year. I didn't know Micah would get hurt. But Max is better. Like, if you say to yourself, well, why would you go get Max? You had Micah. Max is better, and because of the deal for, the Micah deal, you used assets to directly or indirectly solve your interior D-line, which was trashed while you had Micah. That's why your defense was so bad with Micah. So, and just to give you some sense, I'm not anti-Micah, but my scouts always said the same thing. Kind of a splash player, not very good against the run, at times against the top tackles can disappear. And, Albert Breer reported this last year, whereas CeeDee Lamb and Dak and Zach Martin were loved in the Cowboy locker room. Micah turned some people off, a little distracted, a little bit of ego, whatever. No reason to pick on him, but that's just been reported.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, though, because Colin talked about paying for Micah and how expensive it is and how it's actually good to get rid of him, but now that he's Will. And he had the whole list of, players and how those, those guys, when you pay them the Myles Garretts of the NFL, the Micahs of the NFL, that they don't win. And I ripped that take and said that's nonsense. And a lot of Cowboys fans got mad at me for having that take, and which I don't know why they got mad. It doesn't really make sense, but, and now, though, with Maxx Crosby, you're saying, well, it's okay to pay Maxx Crosby all this money and give up this, capital for it. And it's just like, wait a second. You just said that it's not good to do that. But now it is. Snorts. How does that make sense? Like, this is the take that I'm talking about. Rebuild with Andrew Whitworth retired. They were fine without Von Miller. They even made it fine without Aaron Donald, although he was great. I would have moved Micah Parsons too. Edge rushers do not equal Super Bowls. Let me list the highest paid edge rushers in the NFL currently. Micah, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, Maxx Crosby, Josh Hines, Allen, Brian Burns. A lot of guys that don't even sniff the playoffs. Yeah, Nick Boss has got some, but yeah. So did everybody on those Nurse. So, and I ripped this take. I said, this is nonsense. And I went on a whole rant and was like, when you look at the list of the highest paid players for every position, a wide receiver, because he's done this with wide receivers, you can do it with quarterbacks, you can do it with receivers, you can do it with edge rusher, You do it with every position. The vast majority of these highest paid players are often not at the top of the list of winning. It's just the way it goes. So, but like now we're saying, well, let's go out and get Maxx Crosby, and it's just like that's what I'm struggling with. And it's funny because when I made this video, I had a lot of people get mad at me. And it's actually really funny because I'm looking at the comments of that video now. People telling me how delusional I am. I don't know anything about football. Colin is 100% right. Dude, you just hate the truth and sound ignorant. His statement was true. None of the top defensive ends has a ring. Okay. You know, Julian, you are actually so delusional when it comes to Dallas, bro. Your logic makes no sense. And I was like, all right, again, and these are all Dallas Cowboys fans, mind you, Colin is absolutely right. Don't need edge to pay edge rushers. Yeah, you sound like an amateur. Colin is right. Delete this video. You're rambling, and it's like comments are eating you alive, bro. Terrible take and general lack of ball knowledge. All right. Okay, that was all Cowboys fans. Now you want to go out and get Maxx Crosby. Tell me now why that makes sense now. And it has nothing to do with the other players that they were able to get. And that's not what the conversation was about. The conversation was specifically about why you shouldn't tie up money. That's what the conversation was about. Why you should not tie up money with head rushers. That's what the conversation was. That's what the take was. And that's what I ripped. I didn't even say that it wasn't a good idea to trade Micah and this, that, you know, I wasn't on that conversation was about paying highest paid, you know, the highest paid edge. That's why he shows this graph, and that's what I had conversation about, and I said that doesn't really make sense, and I went on the whole rant, and I showed you know, charts of the highest paid wide receivers, this, that, and the third. So again, if I had no idea what I was talking about during that video, and I was ripped and delusional and dumb and this, that, and the third, please explain to me why it's okay though now. That's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at. All those people that said how dumb I am, and this, that, and the third, they're going to be the same people that are like, Max is great, of course you got to do it. And then they're going to twist themselves in knots to defend it. It's not how logic works. It's not how logic works. That's why I focus on a specific argument, a specific take, and say, this does not make sense that we're not for this type of conversation. I always talk about the lenses. We zoom in, we zoom out. We zoom in, we zoom out. This was a zoomed in conversation about paying edge rushers. Colin went on a whole rant about how you don't really care about edge rush. Doesn't really matter. Quarterbacks don't care about it as much. They care more about them that are going at their feet. Chris Jones, blah, 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 and how you can move on. From these guys, you don't need them. You don't need a Michael. You don't need a Von Miller. What has TJ Watt done? What has Myles Garrett done? All that type of stuff. And I was like, none of this makes sense. And I was like, that's absurd. And so I'm really, really, really genuinely excited to see what Dallas Cowboys have to say now. They want to now give up some legitimate, genuine trade capital and pay Maxx Crosby some money. So now you're giving up capital and money at the same time, which is always, that's big, you know, like that's double dipping in the pain in that regard. And you're an older player as well, a lot older of a player. So I just want to hear about it. And again, I'm not even saying that it's wrong for the Cowboys to go after Maxx Crosby. I just want to know why it's right to pay, why it was wrong to pay Micah in general now and any ed, because again, these guys were saying no. They were defending the highest paid edge rusher tape. So why? So I just want to know. I can't wait to read the comments. I can't wait. It's going to be great. But let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get some discussions. Let's get to some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Let's just have some fun. Please keep it fun in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe. We're building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.